to improve the lives of his fellow men. What is it about ordinary men and women who turn their back on a comfortable life so they can clean up oceans and light up villages? How can they know that what they fight for will make governments sit up and listen?
You can switch on this.
What moves these ordinary people to do extraordinary things? It's called greatness of spirit. It is celebrated every 31st of August by the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation as a fitting homage to the legacy of the Philippine president who was once called Man of the Masses. He believed that the little man is entitled to a little bit more of everything, and that no one's dignity should ever be compromised. Today, over 300 ordinary men and women have displayed the same conviction and courage to transform society, and thus have been honored with the Ramon Magsaysay Award. For protecting fundamental human rights, for encouraging the poor to become asset creators, or for just playing music that colors the mind. And while the award can boost ordinary men and women to celebrity, many of the winners use it to enable them to work much harder for the communities they serve, because they know that the award is not about them, but about the solutions they make. That's how ordinary men and women become extraordinary. How can water reach poor upland communities by using only natural energy? How can the poor borrow working capital for their livelihoods from the bank? How can blindness be prevented in just 5 minutes? Solutions, 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 not just from technocrats or rocket scientists, nor from the power of politics or wealth. They are uniquely Asian solutions, solutions that come from ordinary men and women with extraordinary insight, vision, and spiritual courage. In rural Thailand, affordable and medically sound prosthetic limbs are now available for amputees while they wait. The prosthetics are also custom fitted so that there is a farmer's foot for use in wet, slippery fields, and even a foot for wearing flip-flops. The prosthetic limbs are also brought to the patients directly through the mobile clinics, thus reaching more patients and countries, including Malaysia, Laos, Myanmar, and Indonesia. Through this solution, not only do the amputees walk again, they are able to regain their productivity and self-esteem. In 1986 in the Philippines, the power of the people was harnessed to peacefully restore democratic rights and freedoms. The same non-violent solution inspired the June 1987 uprising in South Korea, which toppled another tyrant and paved the way for direct elections and subsequently built a strong citizenry. Any solution that benefits a community is good, but it is connecting these solutions that creates an even greater good. This is how and why the Magsaysay Institute for Transformative Leadership was born. An avenue for sharing solutions, for creative collaboration, for connecting changes across sectors and borders. An idea exchange that puts people and their communities at the center of everything, so that every society in Asia can be transformed and every life becomes full and productive. The Ram pump brings water to impoverished upland communities in the Philippines by tapping the kinetic energy of flowing water from rivers or springs. Reviving and improving on once discarded technology, the pump is making clean, cheap water available for household use, livestock raising, and small-scale agriculture, not only in the Philippines, but also in Afghanistan, Nepal, and Colombia, where water is likewise very scarce. In Bangladesh, during the early 1980s, the Grameen Bank revolutionized lending by boldly investing in the poorest of the poor. Grameen gave microloans to impoverished rural women at the time when no bank would even consider doing so. Through a disciplined, self-managed, culturally appropriate system of savings and collection, along with a sustained financial literacy program, thousands of families availed of much-needed loans. And loan recovery rates were higher than in the prevailing bank system. The initial Grameen microcredit methods have since spawned many similar enhanced or expanded lending to the poor programs across 58 countries around the world. In Nepal, the vision of poor cataract patients is being restored by using affordable lenses and simplified surgical techniques which were perfected locally. The cataract surgery, which takes only 5 minutes to perform, is preventing nearly 5,000 Nepalese every day from going blind, and is now benefiting thousands more in Vietnam, China, India, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and even North Korea. The greater good is that when the poor and blind can see again, their entire family lives a better life as well. These are just a few examples of how the Magsaysay Awardee's solutions have been connected within Asia and to other parts of the world. Connections made possible through the work of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation and the generosity of its laureates. Imagine how many more meaningful links are waiting to happen. Imagine how Asia and Asian solutions can inspire the whole world towards social transformation. Transformation that ripples towards lasting, positive change in policies, systems, mindsets. Transformation that transcends borders, yet promotes peaceful diversity and gives progress a human face. And in the 21st century, exactly what the world needs.
Good morning, and welcome to this year's RMTLI Lecture Series. We would like to acknowledge our partners for today's event. This event is supported by SGV and Company and Animation Council of the Philippines Incorporated. Special thanks to Pioneer Life Incorporated. We would also like to acknowledge our co-conveners, ASEAN Youth Advocates Network, Asia Society Philippines, Center for Filipino Youth Volunteers, SINAG, Far Eastern University International Studies Society, GoodGov PH, FINMA Education, Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, University of the Philippines Diliman Information Office, UP Asian Center, and Zweli Family Foundation. We would love to see you share your time with us here during the lectures. Please tag us on social media at Magsaysay Award with the hashtag Ramon Magsaysay Award and hashtag RMTLI Lecture Series. Our program will begin in a few minutes. Welcome to the Ramon Magsaysay Center, Manila. For an orderly conduct of the program, the audience is reminded of the following house rules. Please observe silence during the program. Be respectful to the speakers and fellow participants. During the open forum, you may approach the microphone or write your question on the pieces of paper provided and give it to an usher. In case of a medical emergency, please approach any of the ushers. If there is a need to evacuate the venue, please stay calm. All doors of the hall will be opened. The ushers will facilitate an orderly evacuation if needed. The exit doors are on the left side of the hall. Those who are on stage and from rows 1 to 10 will use the door near the stage, while those from row 11 onwards will use the door near the back of the hall.
Before we begin today's program, we would like to remind the audience of the following.
By using only natural
The video
energy.
and audio functions of our audience will be disabled during the lecture. For questions, clarifications, and/or comments, we encourage everyone to use the Q&A tab and the chat room in the Zoom webinar or the comment section in Facebook or YouTube. We will try to address as many relevant questions and comments during the session. Please be respectful in the chat room, Q&A tab, and comment section. Please follow the Ramon Magsaysay Award on our social media accounts in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. For more information on the Ramon Magsaysay Award and this year's laureates, please visit our website at www.rmaward.asia. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin the program in a few minutes.
To officially open today's event, may we call on the Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, Ms. Suzanne Siskel.
Good morning, everybody. Magandang umaga. It's great to see so many people here and to have many people with us on Zoom as well. This is the second day of the 66th Ramon Magsaysay Transformative Leaders Institute event in this wonderful celebratory awards week. We're just thrilled to have all of you with us. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the presence of some distinguished guests who are attending via Zoom. His Excellency Ambassador Imtiaz Ahmad Kazi, Embassy of Pakistan, Mr. Curtis Chin, former Ambassador of the US to the Asian Development Bank, Honorable Shirley O. Nuevo, First Secretary and Consul of the Philippine Embassy in Hanoi, Vietnam, Mr. Stephen Muncy, 2021 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee and Executive Director of Community and Family Services International, Mr. Ian Hinez, the Associate Director for Exhibition Programs of the Metropolitan Museum, Manila, Ms. Margarita Moran Florendo, Vice Chairman of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Ms. Elenita E. Cruz, Artistic Director and Guild President, Marikina Culture and the Arts Council, Founding Trustee of the Beacon School, Ms. Dina Paterno, and a very special acknowledgement of our President, Susan Afan, who's also on Zoom this morning. For over 6 decades, the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation has honored individuals and organizations across Asia who embody dedication, integrity, and a commitment to societal transformation. In recognizing these leaders, we uphold the legacy of Ramon Magsaysay, the 7th President of the Philippines, whose spirit of service and leadership continues to inspire change makers throughout the region and I hope the world. Aligned with the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation's mission to nurture future leaders, the Ramon Magsaysay Transformative Leadership Institute provides a platform for dialogue and learning that empowers emerging change makers. Through initiatives like today's lecture, we aim to deepen our understanding of cultural preservation, sustainable development, and the role of heritage in driving human progress. Today, we are excited to explore the heart of Bhutan with the topic, Balancing Tradition and Modernity, Preserving Culture for Human Progress by Dr. Karma PHUNTSHO, whom you'll meet in a moment. Leading global experts have pointed out 3 pillars: commitment to promoting education, dedication to nurturing local enterprises, and passion for safeguarding cultural heritages and traditions. Over the past 25 years, this is what 2024 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee Karma PHUNTSHO has been doing through the organization he founded, Loden Foundation. Loden, literally meaning possessing intelligence, has been at the forefront of supporting Bhutanese children in meeting their educational needs, fostering a culture of responsible production and intelligent consumption, and bridging Bhutan's rich and colorful past with its bright and hopeful future through research and documentation. The organization's impact on the Kingdom of Bhutan is undeniable. All of this has been made possible through Karma PHUNTSHO's transformative leadership, guided by the monastic values he acquired as a former monk. Today, Bhutanese people have expanded horizons where they can grow, pursue their interests and passions, and express themselves creatively because of Karma PHUNTSHO's greatness of spirit. His visionary commitment has turned potential into tangible progress, nurturing a flourishing future for his community. Among this year's Ramon Magsaysay Award honorees, Dr. Karma stands out as a true guardian of cultural heritage. He is a distinguished scholar and cultural advocate from Bhutan, renowned for his work in preserving Bhutanese heritage while embracing modern advancements. With a PhD from Oxford University and as founder of the Loden Foundation, Dr. PHUNTSHO has made significant strides in promoting entrepreneurship, education, and cultural preservation in Bhutan, offering profound insights into cultural preservation as a pathway to human progress. His life's work emphasizes the delicate balance between preserving traditional values and seizing the opportunities of a modern world, a balance that, as he believes, is essential to achieving a harmonious and progressive society. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage our 2024 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from Bhutan, Dr. PHUNTSHO.
Thank you, Suzanne. Madam Chairperson, Vice Chairperson, President, trustees of the Ramon Magsaysay Foundation, and the staff, dear friends who are here in person or being online, good morning, Kuzuzangpola. Before we start, I would like you to be here and now, to be in the present, to feel your chairs, maybe feel the touch of your collar on your neck, to feel your breath. And I would also like to ask you to think about change. We change as we inhale, and we change as we exhale. Every moment our cells are appearing and disappearing. The Buddha has said, all conditioned things are bound to change. And around the same time, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, the only constant in life is change. Some changes are expected, some unexpected. And as expected, my slides will change. You can see day change to night, early morning in Thimphu change to late afternoon, early spring in my village change to summer, and autumn in Thimphu change to winter. I come from a country where mindfulness of change and meditation on impermanence is a very important spiritual training. And as you've been told, I've come from Bhutan. And I hope you'll all be changed persons by the end of this session. Not that you'll turn from sinners to saints, but you'll be quite a bit older. Now, a lot of people don't know where Bhutan is. 20 years ago, I have to insist that Bhutan truly exists. Now it's much easier. Many of you here would have been to Bhutan or heard of Bhutan. I was once on a flight to Beijing, sitting next to a Chinese lady. We introduced each other. I told her I am from Bhutan. 15 minutes later, she turned to me and asked, "So what do you eat in Africa?" Sudan, Bhutan, sounds similar, but Bhutan is in Asia, and Ramon Magsaysay Foundation didn't misplace their award. It is in the eastern Himalayas, a small country of about 38,000 square kilometers, between the two giants of India and China. India on three sides, China on one side to the north. And in demographic terms, we are that small green speck you can see squeezed between the two balloons of India and China. There are nearly 4,000 Indians and Chinese for every single Bhutanese. And I discovered yesterday that there are about 160 Filipinos for every single Bhutanese. You may now pity us for being an endangered species. We are a country that starts almost as low as Philippines, at around 100 meters above sea level in the south, rising rapidly through the subtropical foothills, and then going further up to the cultural heartlands like Thimphu that you see here, and Paro, where the airport is, and then further up to these valleys like Phobjikha, and my own village Ura at 3,200 meters above sea level. And Bhutan rises further up to the height of 7,570, which is the highest unclimbed mountain on earth. Not only is Bhutan very rugged from north to south, it's also very rugged going east to west. It's divided by many mountain ranges, high passes, deep valleys, big rivers, thick forest. I would say Bhutan is a vertical country. If we flatten Bhutan, I'm pretty sure we'll be bigger than Philippines. Because of the rugged terrain, we also enjoy a very rich and diverse cultures with many ethnic groups and about 24 languages spoken in the country, of which 16 are considered endemic. In addition to the cultural diversity within the country because of isolated lives, Bhutan is also, if you look beyond the geopolitical situation of being squeezed between the two military powers of Asia, Bhutan is actually the meeting point of two of Asia's greatest ancient civilizations, the Sino-Tibetan one to the north and the Indic one to the south. And that fusion is reflected in many aspects of our life and culture. So, Bhutan has had a very rich cultural history. And unlike our neighbors, we have not faced colonization. We have not faced any major social upheavals in the country. We have not had any natural calamities that disrupted our cultural heritage. As a result, compared to many parts of the world, Bhutan has until recently enjoyed a very unique integrity and continuity of the cultural heritage. But unfortunately now, things are changing, and Bhutan is also going through a serious period of transition. We are transitioning from being an isolated hermetic kingdom to becoming, or already being a full member of the global community, from a rural community to an urban settlement, from subsistence farming to a consumerist market economy, and from being an oral society to now an audiovisual social media world, and politically from a medial monarchy to a bicameral multi-party democracy, and from being a nature-oriented, animistic, pre-Buddhist and mind-centered Buddhist spirituality to now a more secular scientific worldview. And let me elaborate a bit further on this process of change and transition. This is a map of my district, Bumthang in central Bhutan. My village, Ura, is on the eastern edge of the district. Jatsa is on the western end. When I grew up, a lot of old people in my village would say, oh, somebody has gone so far as Jatsa, the end of sky. Jatsa on the edge of Bumthang to the west was the end of sky. Today, that village is about 1.5 hours by car on the new highway. I've discovered in 2018, when I was meeting the Bhutanese diaspora in New York City, that I found many more first cousins, in fact, the most first cousins in New York City than anywhere else in the world. So our world, in 50 years, have exploded from Jatsa being the end of the world to people living in Australia, Canada, America, Middle East, and many other parts of the world. Similarly, if you look at this picture from 1960s of Thimphu, the capital was just a big fortress, the Dzong, with some few farmhouses around it. And this is the picture today, 60 years later, of how the valley has turned into a concrete jungle, as I often say. And this is lower Thimphu in 1980s only. This is what it was a few years ago. So we have moved from a totally rural community now to about 50% of the population living in urban centers. Similarly, when you look at the economy, people were subsistence farmers in the past, and in the last 60 years we have moved from that to become, to join the global consumerist market economy, which has led to serious challenges in terms of food security and food sufficiency. This is a picture of my village taken in 1930s by a British visitor. You can see the fields stretch all the way up to the ridge. This is a picture I took a few years ago, how the forest has come down all the way to the doorsteps. So agricultural farming has gone down, but our environment has got richer. Bhutan was a largely oral society with maybe about 20% of the people who knew how to read and write. Knowledge, practices, skills were passed on orally. But we have moved in the last 60 years from an oral society almost directly to an audiovisual society without establishing a very strong literary culture. TV came in 1999 along with internet, and now you can find Facebook, WhatsApp, WeChat, and TikTok even in the most remote parts of Bhutan. Politically, we have moved from medieval monarchy to a multi-party democracy with elections, and they bring their share of challenges and problems. But the most important transition we see in Bhutan that is not easily visible to a fresh visitor is the change happening within people's heads and minds, the cultural change, the mindset, and the worldviews. If you ask my father where he is, he would proudly say, I'm in Bhutan, north of Bodh Gaya, the epicenter of the southern continent, which lies south of Mount Meru, the traditional Indic cosmology. But if I put the same question to my nephews and nieces, they will say we are in a small landlocked country sandwiched between India and China. So the way they identify themselves, the way they relate to others, the way they think of existence is changing drastically. You could say that in Bhutan we have two Bhutans. The traditional Bhutan still in the villages, speaking local languages, following traditional cultures, being more spiritual, and then you have the new young generation who are more modernized, who use English as a medium of communication, are mostly located in urban centers. We are moving from our pre-Buddhist, nature-related, animistic worldview and the mind-centered Buddhist worldview now to a much more materialistic, scientific, secular worldview. And a more recent challenge Bhutan has been facing in terms of culture is the mass emigration of young people. As you can see from the long queue of young people to sit for the English language test, and also the farewell gathering at the airport, which happened a few years ago. So, Bhutan is changing, but the point I wish to make is not just that Bhutan is changing. All over the world, we are going through a tremendous change. There were only about 1 billion people living in urban centers in 1960. Now, about 65% of the global population is urban settlements. Internet, which started only 30 years ago, social media, which started only about 20 years ago, is now being used by over 60% of the global population. We have also health challenges like COVID and HIV, which has transformed our behavior and lifestyle. We have climate change, which is bringing a lot of unforeseen challenges. So the whole world is going through changes. What I want to stress is that Bhutan's change has been fast. The pace of change in Bhutan is such that I, in my lifetime, have seen motor roads, electricity, television, internet, smartphones, all come. And most Bhutanese have witnessed that. As a cultural scholar, I often make this claim that Bhutan has changed much more in the last 60 years than 600 years before that. And when you face such intense change, you struggle. There's a lot of stress and tension, confusion. And we need to find a developmental compass to find a sense of direction. And that came in the form of gross national happiness from our fourth king, when he spelled out that gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. And that has been further developed towards the end of the 20th century to be the development goal of Bhutan, with 4 pillars of social development, socio-economic development, good governance, cultural preservation, and environment conservation. This has further been broken down into 9 domains with 33 indicators, and the Center for Bhutan and GNH Studies have carried out 5 surveys so far, and the last 3 big surveys, they came out with the results that when you look at the Bhutanese population, in 2010, they were about 41%, they were deeply and extensively happy, and that rose to 43.4 in 2015 and 48% in 2022. Imagine that 0 represents all Bhutanese being always unhappy, and 1 represents all Bhutanese being always happy. Bhutan is somewhere around 0.78 at the moment, according to this survey. But of course, there are also other surveys like the World Happiness Survey, which places Bhutan somewhere in the 90s within 150 countries or so. So, I have been, as an academic, I say practical academic, studying Bhutan's changes and the challenges for over 2 decades, and always looking out for solutions, opportunities to do something. And one such solution, such opportunity came about when I was a student at Oxford and I met Robert Miles, who was deprived of basic school education because of financial difficulties, and he wanted to support a poor child and could afford 50 pounds in a year to support that child. We took those 50 pounds and I approached the local headmaster in my village, and we supported Tenzin Pelmo, our first beneficiary in 1999. She came from a family of 7 sisters with very little income for parents. She is today, we are proud to report, a history teacher and the newest member of the Lothian board. Since then, we have expanded our support to help poor children go to school and get basic education. And then that led to, as we scaled up, the foundation of Lothian as an educational civil society organization in Bhutan. With awareness of the importance of early child care and development, we also built 5 early learning centers, out of which we still run 3 and handed over 2 to the government. In spite of Bhutan's success in school education, Bhutan still faces serious challenges in human resource capacity, and we today have our scholarship program through which we fund young people to go to universities, especially for subjects that Bhutan stands in need and will stand in need in the near future. I personally always wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor when I was a young boy, but somehow my dreams failed to come to reality when I became a monk at the age of 16. But later I pledged that I will support at least 10 medical doctors somehow by raising funds for them. I'm happy to report we have now supported altogether 27 MBBS students and 35 nurses, pharmacists, and other health professionals. But we are still way below the WHO requirements in Bhutan. Then the new century, the 21st century, brought also a new challenge for Bhutan in terms of youth unemployment. And this is when I and my 2 friends, Anne and Gerard Tagli, who are here, we conceived the project of a business education program to groom young people, to help them open up their minds, to motivate them, and then to give them the required skills and funds to start businesses. And since then, we have now supported, through funding, 301 businesses and trained almost 6,000 young people. We first open up their minds or motivate them, inspire them, then we after building their capacity, give them interest-free, collateral-free loans, and then do follow-ups through monitoring and mentoring, and finally build a strong network and community of these young entrepreneurs. And our wish is that through building such group of young, socially responsible entrepreneurs, we can create a new tradition of private sector and business in Bhutan that is socially responsible, environmentally friendly, culturally sensitive, and that will contribute to building a sustainable, caring economy. But my main work as an academic has been in the realm of culture. And this is the source from where we derive the wisdom and compassion that we integrate into our education and entrepreneurial programs as well. When I finished my degree at Oxford, I was offered a job to look at Tibetan manuscripts brought out of Tibet by the British mission in 1903, which remained in the Bodleian Library, Oxford, University Library, Cambridge, and the British Library. And while studying those old manuscripts, it revealed to me how Bhutan has, given the cultural continuity that I mentioned earlier, how we have a rich archival tradition located mostly in the remote monasteries and temples. And that led me to the first project of digitizing monastic archives. And in many places without electricity, so we used cameras instead. And modern digital technology facilitated to do this kind of documentary work very easily. Since then, we have covered now 75 libraries, bringing up to about 5 million pages of manuscripts being digitized. And on one of the trips to digitize a temple, I was with my team when the road got washed away and we were stuck at the road. They were looking for somebody to help carry the equipment. I was waiting at the roadside with the equipment, wearing my bamboo hat, and an old man waddled towards me. You can see me with a bamboo hat in the picture. And seeing my bamboo hat, which is becoming very rare in Bhutan, he chanted a ballad. Oh, the bamboo hat from Dhaka region. You're my bamboo hat during sunny days and somebody else's bamboo hat during rainy days. If you're somebody else's during rainy days, what use do I have for you during sunny days? And he said, tell this to an unfaithful partner. And I asked, old man, can you chant more? Of course, he said he can, but he would like to have a drink. So we bought some drinks, sat by the roadside. I had my early Nokia phone, which I used to record him, and he had hundreds such ballads and poems to chant. And it dawned on me how when he passed away, he was already around 80, tipsy by mid-afternoon. So when he passed away, I felt that the whole literary world that he embodied would also die with him. And that encouraged us to look for funding and support to do an extensive nationwide documentation of oral and intangible cultures. And we are happy to report we have done over 3,300 hours of such recording so far, and we are in the process of editing them and making them available online fully as soon as possible. Right now, most of this footage can be viewed on the website of our partner in America, the University of Virginia. So while doing all this work in cultural documentation, there were three things that I realized we really need to think of, not only in Bhutan, but globally, with regard to culture and today's world. One, we need to have a very good understanding of the cultural heritage. And we have managed to do a very serious mapping and typology of Bhutan's cultures. And through such deep and extensive knowledge, we can then think about which culture is even relevant today. What can we save for practical use? There are some cultures we will have to relinquish. We can't ask the Bhutanese farmers any longer to plow with a bullock using a wooden plow or a wooden yoke, because there are now mini tractors and power tillers. So there are some cultures we need to identify to be preserved for historical memory and research, but there are others that may need astute and smart modification and adaptation without losing the core values. And third, even more important, is that a lot of the cultures anywhere in the world They may be relevant to the local community, but not to others. Then there are cultures that are relevant to the nation, and far more important, the cultural values and practices that are relevant to all humanity. And this is what we have been seriously studying. I hope you'll be able to publish a mini encyclopedia of Bhutan's cultures to showcase the cultural typology. And we constantly work with our partners, including the government, on how to rethink about culture to make it more dynamic and not only see culture from a very conservative lens. So, to bring back you to the awareness of change, we are bound to change. The Buddha said the mindfulness of change is the best mindfulness, just like the footprint of an elephant. An elephant's footprint is so clear, and if you want to follow the elephant, it is not misleading. It directs you very clearly. In the same way, if you have the mindfulness of change, you become more acutely aware of the responses and becoming more astute in our responses. With that in mind, I've been devoting much of my time to help reformulate and reappropriate Bhutan's cultural heritage. My main academic work today with the Chadra Foundation in the US is on bringing Buddhist values into daily lives of all citizens without the religious baggage. I've also been building a Center for Study and Contemplation in Thimphu, hoping that this will help young people of Bhutan, especially in coping with the new mental health challenges that we face. Every year I go back to my village to help organize a festival, trying to be a bridge between the local community and the world that comes to the festival every year. We have about 50 countries coming to the festival, to about 500 tourists. So I try to help communicate between these two worlds. More recently, our King, His Majesty, the 5th Trukelpo, seeing the need to design a sustainable and caring model of economic success and prosperity, has launched the Gelifu Mindfulness City, aiming to combine spirituality, sustainability, and commercial success. So today I humbly invite all of you to join us in these projects. And as we reflect on change, I also request you to reform, perhaps transform our own perspective on change itself. Typically, we view change from a pessimistic lens, thinking it is destructive, disruptive, but fresh spring flowers come from dry, arid winters because of change. Change brings us new opportunities, new avenues for growth, improvement, and renewal. While it may require the greatness of spirit and transformative leadership to harness the power of change and build a bold, beautiful future, I personally believe that even a basic understanding of culture can reveal that answers to some of our challenges that humanity is facing lies in our past, in the ancient knowledge and the wisdom traditions. And I would like to conclude with a local piece of wisdom. Ang hindi lumingon sa pinanggaling nga, hindi makakarating sa parolunaw. Thank you.
I think we've been transported to a different place. Thank you so much for what an inspiring and incredibly beautifully illustrated lecture, Dr. Karma. Earlier I acknowledged a number of people who are with us on Zoom. We also have one of our trustees of the foundation, Shel Habito, who's an awardee and trustee of Radio Veritas Asia. So thank you, Shel, for being on Zoom as well. And I'm sure there are many other people whom we don't know who are on Zoom. And we thank you all for your attention, even though it's remote. And I hope you've found this to be as insightful and inspiring as I think all of us in the room have. As we continue with our program, we're delighted to welcome an esteemed panel to share their reactions and insights stemming from Dr. Karma's lecture. And to guide us through the discussion, I want to introduce a dear friend, fellow trustee of the Magsaysay Foundation, who's our moderator today. Emily Abrera is a pioneering figure in Filipino advertising, a cultural advocate, and a leader in the nonprofit sector. As the first female chairperson of McCann Erickson Philippines, she led the advertising industry with a focus on integrity and social responsibility. Emily's commitment to culture is evident in her work as former chairperson of the Cultural Center of the Philippines Board of Trustees, where she championed initiatives to support Filipino heritage and local artists, promoted the arts, and expanded cultural programs. She also serves as trustee and was former chair of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, honoring Asia's inspiring changemakers. As chairperson of the Foundation for Communication Initiatives, she advocates public understanding of social issues, championing advocacies through impactful media campaigns. Her influence across media, culture, and social impact continues to drive appreciation for Filipino heritage and meaningful change in the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Emily Abrera.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, for the warm greetings, and hello to everyone. I'm truly honored to be your moderator for today's panel discussion. To respond to that very thought-provoking lecture delivered by our distinguished 2024 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee, Dr. Karma PHUNTSHO. Together with our panelists, I look forward to exploring the insights and questions that his work, I'm sure, has sparked in your imaginations. But before we proceed, I have one question to you, Karma. We've talked about the concept of gross national happiness, of course, and while this has captivated the imaginations of so many other countries, surely the definition of what constitutes happiness is very different from in Bhutan as in different other places. And I'm not sure that that everyone has actually correctly interpreted it as yeah. Okay, thank you. He will answer that in a bit. So as we move into the next part of our program, I'm honored to introduce our esteemed panel for this morning. Experts, they share a commitment to building a sustainable future through insights drawn from history and cultural heritage, much like those highlighted in Dr. Karma's work. Our first panelist is Ms. Ligaya Fernando Amilbansa. She is a cultural researcher, educator, artist, and advocate. She's dedicated to preserving the indigenous arts of the southern Philippines, particularly the Sulu archipelago. Please come up stage, and then while I read out your background here. Her primary focus has been the Pangalay. a pre-Islamic dance tradition among the Samal, Bajau, Yama, Mapun, and Tausug peoples. She works largely on her own and using personal resources has spent decades documenting, teaching, and promoting this expressive dance form. In 1999, she moved back to Metro Manila, founded the Alun Alun Dance Circle. That's such a provocative name, no? Alun Alun, it means waves, okay, wave. And transformed her own home, into a dance studio to study, teach, and perform the pangalay and other traditional dance forms. ADC has since conducted hundreds of performances and workshops nationwide, including the recent Pangalay at Mascara held at De La Salle University, Manila, the Metropolitan Theater, and the Far Eastern University of Manila, helping to sustain and celebrate the rich cultural heritage of the Philippines. In 2015, she won the Ramon Magsaysay Award for her single-minded crusade in preserving the endangered artistic heritage of Southern Philippines. Through her work, she has creatively propagated a dance form that not only celebrates, but also deepens a shared cultural identity among Asians. Her dedication to this art form reflects her own profound commitment to cultural preservation and the unifying power of heritage across borders. Joining her this morning on stage is Ms. Nanette Matilak. Nanette? Who is the Managing Director of the Alun Alun Dance Circle. Nanette works with Ligaya to preserve and promote Pangalay, a national dance of the Southern Philippines. She assists in choreography, performance, and educational initiatives, helping expand public awareness of the Pangalay's cultural values. Matilak's, Nanette's role supports ADC's mission to keep this heritage alive and accessible to wider audiences. So they face a similar, challenge here in the face of changing cultures. So once again, let us welcome Ms. Ligaya Amilpangsa and Ms. Nanette Matilak. We have a second panelist, Eddie Jose. He is a distinguished curator at De La Salle University Center for Heritage Conservation and is known for his innovative work in art curation and cultural promotion. He is, of course, the son of our 1980 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee, Francisco Sionil Jose, or Frankie Sionil Jose, as he's known to us. And Eddie is dedicated to arts and cultural advocacy. He's a master conservator since the early 80s. He specializes in restoring Asian works on paper and fabric, particularly Himalayan tankas. He trained over a decade in top national studios in Japan and served as head conservator for Asian prints and paintings at the Honolulu Museum from 2005 to 2010. He founded the Druk Foundation for Art Preservation and the Tanka Conservation Center in Thimphu in Bhutan. He has collaborated with renowned institutions like the Cleveland Museum of Art and the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco and has published numerous articles on conservation. Through his work, he significantly contributes to the appreciation and understanding of Asian art and cultural heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our second panelist, Mr. Eddie Jose. Yes, please. And we shall proceed immediately to our panelists' reactions to the lecture delivered by Sir Karma.
Hello. Oh, can hear. Hello, you can hear me. It's loud and clear. Yes. Okay. I'm so happy to be sharing this moment with you, fellow cultural practitioners and initiators, educators, culture advocates, and culture vultures, musiceros, musiceras, salamat. Mabuti nandito kayo to share our special moment with a very distinguished 2024 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from Bhutan. Our distinguished lecturer is right. Tama siya. Culture is a dynamic process evolving through time. That process is history. It is the continuity of traditions which takes a long time to develop. Like Dr. PHUNTSHO, many among us are aware of the obstacles or stumbling blocks in preserving traditional cultures to keep pace with modernity. Leading the list of obstacles mentioned by Dr. PHUNTSHO is globalization via digital revolution and modernization. These threats have reached epidemic, I want to say pandemic proportions. Cultural practitioners or development workers in culture should also use digital platforms to advance their purpose. That's what I think. Why not? Libre naman. Another hindrance is the acute effects of social media and audiovisual facilities in cultural communities that are transforming from an oral past too rapidly for comfort. Napakabilis. This barrier exacerbates the threat of imbalance in the spiritual versus the material pursuits of life in those communities, in our barrios, in our islands, in our cities. This imbalance is happening in my area of study, the Sulu Archipelago. In 1969, I began the research and documentation of Pangalay, a pre-Islamic dance tradition of the ethnic communities of the Sulu Archipelago in the southern Philippines, the Tausug, the Sama, the Bajau, the Jamabapon, and also the Yakan. Pangalay, also called Igal, is a living link to the dance cultures in Asia. In 1974, I organized the first dance group in Tawi-Tawi province in a unit of the Mindanao State University in Bongao, Tawi-Tawi. I called it the Tambuli Cultural Troupe, or TCT. The troupe was intended to show Pangalay to a bigger audience. Also, it was a testing ground of the dances that I have so far documented. At first, the community paid little attention. Walang interest. Tinutukso pa sila, tumble down. Tumble down. However, after the groundbreaking and widely publicized series of performances in Manila in 1975 and 1976, Pangalay or Igal and the troupe got much needed attention. Parang sikat na. Always televised, on television, they got interviewed. all over the newspapers, no less than the national artist in dance, Mrs. Leonor Orosa Gokinko and her sister, and other, Rosalinda Orosa, and many others wrote about us. Pangalay earned more than media mileage after the Ayala Museum published my findings in 1983. The book is entitled Pangalay, Traditional Dances and Related Folk Artistic Expressions. It won the National Award for Best Art Book that year, 1983. Pangalay postures and gestures with animation at the corner of the book, right-hand corner of the book, appeared in the book. Pangalay groups have since sprouted all over the Sulu Archipelago. Bawat island municipality, naglagay na sila. Nagkaroon na sila ng dance groups. And of course, today, they proliferate on the internet. Iba't ibang version, different versions of the Pangalay or Igal tradition. Sadly, contrary to the ideal sense of modesty and decorum observed in 1969, which I observed doing fieldwork, what is peddled today with impunity by social media are disturbing. Nakakaaburido nga ako minsan eh. For example, suggestive movements that are haram or taboo, considering that they are mostly Muslims, like the chest out posture. Ito na sila ngayon. May attitude na. Bawal na bawal. This is the posture for Pangalay kasi tinatago ito. Okay? This part of the torso of a female dancer, pinipilit. Siyempre, parang it is not given prominence when a female dancer performs. Swaying hips, tataligid pa ngayon. You see on YouTube, tatalikod pa. Papakita. That is haram. Oo, it is really taboo. Because when I was learning Pangalay, my teacher told me, that was in 1969, Inda, ayaw maghibal-hibal. Huwag malikot. Oo, hindi malikot. Tsaka, no expression in the face. Parang blank paper lang yun. You don't emote. A Pangalay dancer who's really a good dancer will not emote. Kung ninenervyos, baka mumisi-ngisi yun. Smile pa siya para mawala yung nervousness niya. And then also, wala itong ganito. And you see that all over sa YouTube, na nakaka-disturb talaga. Ako, nayayamot. Kasi alam ko, it should not be done that way. Another drawback noted by Dr. PHUNTSHO is the lack of skilled human resources. The insufficient skill or knowledge of cultural practitioners, especially in dance tradition, is a common cause of breach or abuse of artistic license by dancers, choreographers, costumes and props managers, etc. They should learn something about the context. Is very important when we are trying to preserve something. These people are from a water culture. In Bhutan, bundok. In the Sulu Archipelago, tubig. So, our dances are, well, as to be expected, parang lumulutang sa tubig. Well, this is not the time to discuss that. If you are more interested in that, talk to Miss Nanette Matilak, attend our workshop maybe, something, learn Pangalay. In no small way, our group, our managing director is Miss Nanette Matilak. The Alon-Alon Dance Circle shares the task of preserving, conserving, and popularizing the Pangalay or Igal tradition. The Alon-Alon Dance Circle was organized in 1999. Matagal na, napanganak na ba kayo? Ang iba sa inyo, I know, hindi pa napanganak. By a group of not so young professionals, may mga edad na. But nakita nila, uy, pwede pala ako magsayaw nito because it is so slow. Huh? Parang ang dali. Okay? So, not so young professionals. Inspired by the beauty and versatility of the Pangalay tradition. The Alon-Alon Dance Circle, furthermore, organizes collaborative performances with dance groups like the Marikina Dance Guild, the Philippine Barangay Group, and other performing artists. Napipiano ba? Nagigitara? Nabibiolin? Tumutugtog ng flute? Ng marimba? We've collaborated with these people. And I brought some of them to other lands to perform. Mapakita naman what the Filipinos can show them in terms of the performing arts. Na iba sa karaniwan because we are showing the Pangalay tradition with different types of music, with different costumes, various dance properties in the interest of newness. I'll get into that. So, those who are enamored with Pangalay after they see the performance, they are encouraged. I want to train into this dance. I want to train in dancing Pangalay kasi nga it looks so easy. So we teach the postures and gestures, the movement vocabulary of Pangalay for dance purposes, but also for health and wellness. May rayuma? Okay yung exercise namin. Ha? Please. I devised only 10 exercises to prepare the body of somebody who wants to learn Pangalay. Ay, stretch naman konti. So kung may rayuma, we have this exercise. It helps. May carpal tunnel syndrome, it helps. Napakadali, napakasimple. Or just the two fingers. Parang child's play, just like play. The beauty of Pangalay is that it is a dance tradition that teaches mindfulness, focus on self. Nagsasayaw ka ng Pangalay, iniisip mo yung boyfriend mo. I don't think it's, siguro hindi ganun ang mindset ng marami nagsasayaw ng Pangalay kasi they have to focus on what they are doing. Kaya nga we say, it is, parang nagme-meditate. It's like meditation, very prayerful. You have to be in the moment. It teaches you concentration, being at the moment. The slow rhythm follows the breath or music within the body. I always tell them, because it's difficult for those who are just learning Pangalay to coordinate, exhaling with the flexing of the knees, and then take in the breath when they, okay, again, exhaling, inhaling. It takes time to master that. And that technique, which I developed, makes a Pangalay dancer appear as if she's floating on water, parang nakalutang. That's the sensation of lightness. And even a Pangalay performer who has gained enough mastery of this technique, they feel it. Ma'am, para akong nakalutang. Sure, you have to feel it. to make it appear when you dance pangalay. So, the meditative quality of pangalay promotes physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual being. Dr. PHUNTSHO stressed cultural dynamism, creative adaptation, and intelligent innovation as factors that add newness to traditions that are still relevant and useful. I'd like to take note. Being aware that preservation precedes conservation, the Alon-Alon Dance Circle advocates training first, the memory. Mag-memorize muna kayo. You have to memorize before the imagination. Improvisation or newness follows afterwards. Naisip-isip, para method, huwag na kayo mag-invento. Kasi we want to preserve a tradition. So you have to memorize. Ano ba the basics or fundamentals? It's the movement vocabulary. The posture. Kailangan matutunan nyo because that is the distinctive character. That posture of a pangalay dancer. Hindi ito. Hindi ganyan. Oo. Hindi maganda yan. Improvisation or newness follows afterwards. Learning or memorizing the basic or fundamental pangalay or igal vocabulary follows a training program based on the Amilbangsa instruction method, published in 2019. This simple system is the product of nearly 50 years of research and experience. This book was published in 2019 and launched at the University of the Philippines. We don't dispense or we don't sell this book to just everyone. It's not a money-making venture. They have to be with us, learning with us, and the book is for recall purposes only. It should be that way. Kasi ocular demonstration is very important when we learn a living tradition. Ngayon ito, mamaya wala na nga eh. So, you have to learn from a good teacher to gain mastery of a tradition when your intention is to preserve it. What you want to conserve? Okay, that's when you introduce new things. You use masks. Kung anong pwede. Less is more. Hindi kahit ano ilalagay. I tell our dancers, our members, or those who attend workshops with us, less is more. Huh? The stage is not a museum. Okay, almost. Yeah. So, the typical or distinctive pangalay posture, together with a slow rhythm linked with normal breathing, are maintained to preserve the authentic character of the dance tradition. ADC's dynamic innovations generate enthusiasm, allowing audiences to see a tradition, nakikita, with new eyes, parang bago, nagugulat sila. Insights and perspectives or possibilities of modifying an old form to survive modernity. Kasi, bakit palagi may sayaw na hawak yung bujak, yung lance? Hindi ako interesado sa ganyan. Okay, we can use the footwork when we choreograph. Pero hindi na yun nagaganon. Okay, ha? So, to conclude, allow me to mention the companion volume of the Pangalay book. Oak Hill, Visual Arts of the Sulu Archipelago, published by the Ateneo Press in 2005. Wala na ito, ubos na lahat ito, pati pangalay. The abundant legacy of artistic forms in these books embody or symbolize the greatness of spirit of ethnic culture bearers or initiators. In my case, in the case of Pangaway, si Sama, the Tausug, the Bajau, the Yamamapon, the Yakan of the Sulu Archipelago. Their creative work generates a feeling of belonging. Parang, uy, taga Pampanga ka, Pangasinan, oh, taga Visayas ka, oh, parang makakamuka itong mga nakikita ko dito sa aklat na ito, itong mga crops na ito, parang nakikita ko the way nag-uukit sila, things like that. So, it arouses a feeling of belonging and a profound respect for tradition. A fast-changing world with unstoppable growth patterns needs the silent eloquence of these legacies, symbolizing the artistic acumen of past generations of Filipinos. The preservation of such legacy is vital to our national identity and unity. Ang hindi lumingon sa pinanggalingan, hindi makakarating sa kanyang paroroonan. I'm just repeating what our distinguished lecturer mentioned a while ago. Last but not least, at this juncture, I have the great honor and pride to yield the floor for a brief discussion of digital archiving, a project of the Alon Alon Dance Circle ongoing since 2022 with assistance from the National Commission for Culture and the Arts.
Thank you so much,
Nanette
Ligaya. Let's welcome Nanette.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Ayan. Mr. PHUNTSHO discussed about the archiving also. We decided, the Alon Alon Dance Circle, to create an archive because during the pandemic, when everyone is locked up, everyone suddenly realized that we can actually communicate digitally, online, virtually. And so people became aware of digital assets. So many groups also showed their past performances. And so we have a lot of, probably all organizations have a lot of digital assets. So since 1999, our group has documents in video, audio, text, photos of a wide range of subjects, such as indigenous peoples performing in their places of origin, local festivals, interviews with artists and culture bearers, local musicians, conferences, ritual dances, dance concerts in the Philippines and abroad, choreographies, lectures, and dance workshops. We also have the non-digital assets of Ligaya Amel Bangsa since the 1970s, which are in cassettes or videos, VHS, Betamax, and so on. No? So in 2022, we applied for a grant in NCCA, and luckily we were able to get a seed funding. And we got the support of the UP Institute of Library and Information Science. The first concern in the archiving is how to migrate the non-digital assets into digital format. So the problem there was, of course, because we are a very humid country, all our videos are already, has so many molds, no? So it's full of molds already. But we were able to get an expert who converted the Umatic, Betamax, VHS, and other video formats, even the other video cassettes like the High 8 and the mini DVs into the current digital format. And sadly, the first concerts of Tambudi Cultural Group, which came to Manila in 1976, which featured all the research of Miss Amel Bangsa, in pneumatic format are gone because when the experts saw it, it's really no longer viable. So we lost what historically was the first performance of an unknown group, which now is an important group because a member of that group is also a Gamaba, living treasure of the Philippines, Sakinor Ayn Mugong de Lasas. So, so far, we already have 6,896 digital files up to 2021 only. And they are systematized through a simple database. And the files are in hard drives, placed in a network-attached system. I don't really know about this, but I was forced to know about this. So you can actually access that online, the NAS, network-attached system, with a backup system. Because you have to have 3 backups for an archive placed in different parts of the country. Because the Philippines is always struck by typhoon, floods, and everything, and earthquakes, so we should be sure that our archives are safe. Currently, we are in the process of describing the materials to create an effective database and library system, because what is important is the retrieval. Even if we have so many materials, if we cannot retrieve these files, it's useless. No? So we are systematizing this, and we will also integrate the materials up to the present. And of course, the digital archive is difficult to sustain because Alon is basically a volunteer organization. So we are all volunteers, no? But we are committed to continue the program as part of our strategic objectives in cultural preservation. We believe that through a simple and effective digital archive with a convenient retrieval system, Alon can be a keeper of living cultural heritage. We also want to ensure that the next generations will be able to access and use the precious information and assets that we have gathered in our generation. So when we make this public, everyone, we will inform you how we will share the digital archive. Thank you.
Shall we hear from Eddie?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Phuntsho, congratulations in winning this prestigious award. I want to ask, how many of you have been to Bhutan? It's very difficult to talk about Bhutan when you haven't been there. So I'm going to talk about Bhutan, and I'm going to talk about my life in Bhutan and what Mr. Phuntsho is talking about. I've been going to Bhutan for the past 3 decades. And I have experienced many things in Bhutan. It taught me how to be quiet. It taught me how to listen. There are things in Bhutan that are mysterious, and you don't ask questions why it happens. So, saying that, there are also many things that you see in the 30 years I've been going back and forth. And Phuntsho Karma has been doing a lot of good work, but he needs to do more. There are a lot of unemployment youth in Bhutan. Educating them is good, but you have to go well beyond that. You have to teach them skills. I am a craftsman. I'm a technician. I restore things. These things I restore cannot be learned in books. You practice them. So, as a sort of something to say to Mr. Phuntsho, I wish your center below them would have vocational courses, because like carpentry, plumbing, all those technical skills you can never learn in books. Education is good, yes, it's definitely good. But I think the skills that one learns is for life. In Bhutan, there are a lot of foreigners who live there. They do works that the Bhutanese don't like to do. I don't know why, but they should be able to sustain themselves with what they have. And now there's an exodus of Bhutanese going to Dubai, Australia, and there's a brain drain. When I was just there last week for the inauguration of the Buddhist Art and Culture Conservation Center. And there's a big difference from before the pandemic. I lived in Bhutan for 10 years, 3 months a year, in spring and in fall. I've seen so many things. I really treasure the land. I really treasure the people. I really treasure the people I know, the monks, the people I know, the government people, the lay people. And why do I always go back? Because I want to help. Knowledge is always important. You have to share it. It is a responsibility. That's why I'm here in the Philippines teaching in LaSalle. My father told me, you are a special person. You know more things than most Filipino do. You go back and teach. So I promised 7 years to teach in LaSalle. And I hope when I leave, like when I left Bhutan, I left something, a legacy. My legacy might not be a lot, but it's something. So, Mr. Phuntsho, I hope you take that advice, take it or leave it, but your country really needs skilled people. You don't need Nepalese, you don't need Indians, you don't need people from Bangladesh. You can do it. That's my talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to our panel, and we will go right into some discussions. We open the floor, of course, the floor is open for questions and reactions from the audience here, but I'm going to start with a couple of questions that have already come in via our virtual audience. The first one here is, well, I did ask you a question earlier, right, about happiness. Would you like to respond to that one first?
Can you hear me? I think you can, right? So the question was about happiness. How do we go about happiness, particularly in a multicultural context? Happiness is not, as we say in academic terminology, not an ethic concept, not that's cross-cultural, but rather emic, bound to the cultural context. But what I often say is, as I started this session earlier, human existence composed of two fundamental things. And without either of them, we are not effective human beings, we are not going to be having any fulfillment. And those essential components of a human existence are the mind and the body. We all have to have our mind and body in the best of shape to be effective, to have a fulfilling life. For the body, we always need the basic conditions for it to survive, for it to be comfortable, for it to be healthy. And I think a state has some responsibility, in fact, a great deal of responsibility to provide the conditions for the human body to thrive, for the society to flourish, so we all have good health, we have good education, we have good social services, and so forth. And as far as that is concerned, a state should have a system to evaluate what progress they make. GDP shouldn't be the only parameter to assess our progress. We should think about how healthy people are, both psychologically and physically. We should think about educational opportunities. We should think about community vitality. So when it comes to measuring the conditions for happiness, particularly in relation to the body, I strongly believe that all governments and states should have an economic system in place. But when it comes to the mental experience of joy and happiness, it is individual, it is subjective. Bhutanese enjoy eating very, very hot chilies. That can be a torture for a lot of people around the world. It's a very subjective experience. Time use, which I shared earlier, is one of the indicators, one of the domains of gross national happiness. Some people are totally happy sleeping 5 hours or 4 hours, while others would need a minimum of 8 or 9 hours. So it's very subjective. So when it comes to the actual experience of happiness, I take a Buddhist point of view, saying it's the state of your mind. If your mind is in the best state, then even a torture can be enjoyed as a blissful experience. And that's what advanced meditators do. But if your mind is not in the right state, a friend of mine says you may be a billionaire on a skyscraper on Fifth Avenue, New York, with so much wealth. All you'd be looking for would be for a window to jump out, if your mind is not in the right space. So the response in brief is that the state and the society as a whole should have some systems in place to assess the conditions for happiness, and leave it to the private individuals and the spiritual practices, the cultural traditions, to determine what actual experience of happiness is.
Okay. Did you get that? All right. It's a deeper sense or a deeper way of measuring what brings about this state of happiness than what we tend to look at, which is the outer manifestations of it. We have a line that's already growing over there. So shall we entertain the first question from the young lady here?
Hello, good morning. I am Athena from the University of Santo Tomas, and this question is for Mr. PHUNTSHO. So it was mentioned earlier in the lecture that it seems as though Bhutan has two cultures or two groups. First are the traditional Buddhist citizens, and the second are the younger generation that grew with modernity and being materialistic. In the Philippines, our mother tongue is planned to become an optional medium as a mode of instruction of our young elementary students. Do you think this move is an act of embracing modernity with tradition, or favoritism for modernity than tradition? And how do you think can language be preserved in the younger generations in light of this?
Thank you for the wonderful question. This is a dilemma a lot of the countries, particularly small countries like Bhutan, and I believe also a multilingual country like Philippines faces. We know that most of our cultures are embedded in the local languages, and a lot of local languages are not sustainable, not viable to be saved. So it is a big struggle. I shared earlier that Bhutan has about 16 local languages. Most of them are spoken vernaculars, not written down. And some languages are spoken by less than a few thousand people. And there's no way we will be able to save them as a viable medium of communication. It is inevitable that these populations, these people speaking the endangered languages will also join the bigger national or the global melt. So in such cases, the best we can do is document them, record them as well as we could. So if in the future we need them for some use, we can bring them back, or at least we have some materials for historical reference. But then it is important that a nation has a language that also unites people, forms a lingua franca. And that is the reason why the Bhutanese state promoted Dzongkha, our national language, as the national language only about 60 years ago. While English has become so popular and is almost taking over the local languages, and even Dzongkha is the lingua franca, the state and the people make concerted effort by promoting it in the parliament. So parliament discussions have to be in national language, not in a foreign language. Our judicial practices are in Dzongkha. You can't submit an English application to the judge. So certain policies do help preserve some languages, but I don't think there is hope to save all languages. And I hear you have 96 different languages here in Philippines. And that is what I meant when I earlier said that first you need to have a very exhaustive, almost exhaustive, maybe exhaustive is too big an ambition, but a very deep, extensive understanding of the languages and the cultures to really make a decision on which languages are not viable and therefore just be documented and preserved, which languages are viable to be adopted for a region and which for the country, and so forth.
Okay, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Did you have any other thing to add? I mean, any of our panelists? Feel free, please.
But
Yeah,
I would
you
like
agree?
to respond to what the panelists shared as well.
Yeah.
Remember, Bhutan was never colonized,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
And there are only about 800,000 people compared to the Philippines. Language is very important, culture is very important, but history is also important. Okay? We still live in a colonial society. Hindi nyo lang alam. Okay? I've been living abroad for a long time, and yet I see the Filipinos. Meron pang colonial mentality. Okay? So you cannot compare Bhutan's culture to our culture.
Yeah. So they're very different contexts.
Yes.
And that is important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Shall we go to the next question? Yes, sir.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ferry Villanueva from Gapan City College. I'm a political science student. Here is my question. Since the majority of the audience is a youth, Mr. Karma PHUNTSHO, you've noted that Bhutan is rapidly modernizing and that many young people there, like in other countries, eagerly embrace this shift. However, in this journey towards modernity, we often see traditional cultures and values being sidelined. In your view, how can the youth in the Philippines find a balance between embracing modern advances and preserving their cultural heritage? What message of encouragement would you offer to young Filipinos here to inspire them to value both tradition and innovation? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, a very difficult question. I have arrived in Philippines for the first time yesterday, and I don't have any illusion that I can give you any advice on how young people in Philippines should take up your culture and development. But I can definitely share what I've seen in other parts of the world, and particularly Bhutan. Now, we are, to even bring in what Eddie was earlier sharing, Bhutan has not been politically colonized, but there is a serious cultural colonization going on all over the world. And we are mostly being colonized today by the big companies in the West. You know, our lifespan has increased, but our attention span has now rapidly decreased. Our expectations have shot through the roof, but our sense of fulfillment is so low. We have this desire for instant gratification, but we are so distracted to achieve even a very small result. So in such a context, I think what the young people need to do across the world is slow down, be patient, have resilience, grit and determination to achieve the results. And I suppose that is applicable to Filipino youth as well. It is definitely applicable to youth in many parts of the world where I have been. So that is one. The other thing I want to again respond to, partly to also Madam here, I learned from Emily that Ligaya means happiness, Madam Happiness. you were demonstrating, you were so engrossed in your performance of dance, which I appreciated so much because it's so meditative. But then you were also talking about the physical gestures, if I heard you correctly. In Bhutan, we had very recently even a lot of debate on social media about how you must behave before a senior person, a person that you respect like the king. Traditionally, Bhutan had a very rigid, strict code of etiquette, especially if you go to the court to see important figures. Traditionally, you believed that not having eye contact is a show of respect. But today, I meet young people. I groom them, I teach them how to have effective interviews. If I teach them not to have eye contact, they're definitely going to fail in their interviews. So I tell them, don't always stoop too low. Be confident, but again, not arrogant or not to show off much, but at least have some eye contact and talk also, respond directly, which would be contrary to the traditional code of etiquette in some ways. But the essence of the traditional code of etiquette and the behavior we need to adopt for an effective interview today is that we have to have good manners. That is the intrinsic value of the behavior, the comportment. So what we really need to do is analyze these cultural practices very well to see the timeless core values which we transmit without having to carry the historical baggage that may seem inconvenient. And I think for Filipinos too, there must be these core messages that you need to carry on and which are viable, which are useful. But if you do it in the old fashion, it may not go down well with the young population. So I think that's where I was bringing in cultural dynamism, and that dynamism can only come through very deep, insightful understanding of the cultures.
Yes. So we preserve a tradition, but we introduce changes. Very formulate, renewal. Kasi kung hindi, sabi ko nga, I gave us an example, yung nagsisema, hawak si bat. Ako interesado doon. We want to learn the steps, the movement vocabulary, perhaps the postures, the gestures, pero hindi na para war dance. I like to create something today for today's audiences. That is how we can march forward. So we use the traditional pangalay vocabulary without changing the distinctive posture, and then the rhythm, which follows the music within the body, but we create new choreographic pieces using different types of music. Pwedeng Western music, pop music, we use many types of music. The music of our national artists, that's for Mascara, Pangalay Mascara. Recently, the last show was at the Far Eastern University. So these things, we have to introduce something new. Pero they will see the new as, ay ba pwede pala? Learn first the basics, the fundamental vocabulary, and then learn in context. Bakit ba ganito ang kanyang costume? Tapos ngayon, we see on television, na dun, sumasayad sa lupa. And nandun sila sa bukid, halimbawa, sa putikan. You expect them to wear their skirt that long, sumasayad sa putik. Ang hirap maglaba sa probinsya, sa mga baryo, walang tubig, kukuha ka pa sa, sa ilog, o kaya sa well. So, short ang suot nila. Tapos, they walk on footbridges. Tapos, mahaba yung damit niya, mahulog siya sa putik, bala siya. Okay? Bali ang buto niya. Sige, ang layo ng ospital. Sa ibang island pa. So, these things. So, you have to learn context. Nagdi-design ka ng costume, pwede wag mo nang gayahin nakita mo sa TV o dun sa kung saan nag-group yan, saan nanggaling sila nalungga. Use your mind. Mag-observe ka. Ano ba sa old pictures? Look at old pictures. Paano sinuot ng mga lelong nila yung kanilang damit. These things. You don't just say, sige, gawin ko to parang gano'n na itsura. No. Lalo sa YouTube, kitang-kita mga pinagagagawa niyo man. These are natives. I'm talking about natives, ha? How much more naman yung non-native?
Thank you, Ligaya. She's such a passionate teacher. Yeah. And the point being, context is very important. And let's not focus so much on the outer manifestations of culture, but on the values that they transmit. Okay?
Very much.
And that should be our best guide. Shall we Yeah, let's have the next gentleman. Anyone from this side, please feel free to, yeah, bring yourselves over. Okay?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning,
After
Mr.
him.
PHUNTSHO.
Thank you.
Before I start, I want to say thank you for the countless of hours that you committed for preserving your intangible
Can you speak
culture.
a little slower so we can we can
closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you for digitizing millions and countless of your texts, and for capturing image in arts and cultures, and for supporting your cultural projects. Now, I wanted to ask you, does modernization inherently erode or assist Bhutan's development, considering its role in enhancing quality of life, meeting nutritional needs, increasing production and employment, providing shelter and infrastructure? While these advances might be viewed as materialistic or potentially polluting due to industrialization, they also signify progress compatible with Bhutan's Gross National Happiness Index. Furthermore, do you perceive modernization as contributing to an erosion of intangible cultural heritage, or do you find resilience with Bhutanese Buddhist culture to balance this change? Thank you, po.
That was rather long. I'm not
Can
sure.
you repeat the last part, the
Yeah,
question that
just
you
your
asked?
last portion.
Do you find modernization as contributing to an erosion of intangible cultural heritage, or do you find resilience within Bhutanese Buddhist culture to balance this change? Thank you.
Sorry, the sound was not very clear, but I hope I got your question, which is, will Bhutan be able to modernize while also keeping the culture alive? Is that right?
Yes, po.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. As a Buddhist practitioner, I personally believe Buddhism is a very progressive religion. I don't practice Buddhism as much as a religion as spirituality. And as spirituality is pretty much science, it's a very open exploration of human meaning and human purpose. And in that respect, there is a lot of critical inquiry in it, but also quite a lot of ethical practices. And I don't see any conflict between the general sort of scientific advancement and modernization with the core principles of Buddhism and the Bhutanese cultural heritage. But then, having said that, of course, what modernization has brought, especially coming from the West, is I often count three evils that is spreading across the globe. One is materialism. Our focus so much on the external matter, external properties and wealth as our source of happiness, which is misplaced at the least, and perhaps quite a totally wrong approach. The second is our view of human beings as being the supreme members of the planet, anthropocentricity. There is a very dangerous idea that human beings are what the world exists for. Third is individualism based on egocentricity. Some of you might have read René Descartes, the French philosopher. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. The system being based on the idea that there is an I or an ego. And when there is an I, there is you and he and she and they, which creates all the discrimination, attachment for oneself, hatred for others, and so forth, which leads to all the evil in the world. So, egocentricity or self-centricity, materialism, and anthropocentricity are the three big cultural ideas that is spreading across the world, and often counter to the traditional ideas we have in Bhutan. First, we have a Buddhist heritage which declares that there is no self, meaning we are all members of a whole, we are just different constituents. There's no real person or individual to hang on to. Then second, our traditional beliefs, both the pre-Buddhist and the Buddhist systems argue that human beings are not the only important members of this planet. In fact, there are territorial deities in our sacred mountains, rivers, forests that are far more important, more powerful than human beings are. They're considered as more sort of permanent residents of the place than human beings are. And then third, of course, we have this very strong tradition of community, of interconnectedness within the community. And some of the modern ideas that comes with industrialization and now with digital revolution is affecting these fundamental values that we have in society. So it is very difficult, but then modernity in terms of technological, scientific advancement, I don't see any tension or friction between that and the Bhutanese culture.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
And with regard to that, I would like to add, because I was yesterday asking my Filipino friends to give us a short history of Philippines. And it seems to me, again, I may be totally wrong, it seems that before the Spanish came here, you had a very rich animistic culture.
Yes.
Now, Bhutan has a very rich pre-Buddhist animistic and shamanic culture. The value of the animistic culture, which is often now being derided as superstition, at the core of it is really the relationship you maintain with nature, with the surrounding, the respect for nature and other life forms. That is crucial, and especially in our times when we face all the challenges of climate change, we need to bring back that reverence and respect for nature and the surrounding. And I often say, even if you put all of humanity's knowledge to this state together, it's probably less than 0.0001% of things that we still need to know. Now, we don't know anything about the universe, so you cannot ridicule and dismiss the belief in mountain deities or river spirit easily. They were not proven to exist, but we cannot also disprove them. And it's worth having some of these belief systems brought back because they're very, very powerful tools for environment conservation. And that's what we try to do through the Loden Foundation. We leverage the cultural knowledge and the practices to help people get enthusiastic in environmental conservation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask, did that answer your question, I hope?
Yes.
Okay.
There's my question.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to this side. Yes, please.
I'm very interested in the happiness index. Even before I met you today, that's what I know most about Bhutan. Aside from it's a beautiful place, but it's hard to access also. No? So anyway, from your presentation, I got that it continues to be a relevant indicator for the country, that like it's important, the happiness index, right?
Sorry, I didn't get, can you please, yes, speak closer to the mic.
Oh, mahina. Okay. The happiness index that you presented earlier indicates that the narrowly happy is growing, although it's still a small percentage. And I also heard from your sharing and Sangye that the migration numbers of Bhutanese going outside the country is also growing. So I have two related questions. Is that the migration, the increased migration, is that connected to the happiness index? Like the narrowly happy is slowly increasing. Is that connected? And the second question is, therefore, are you saying that you need a new measure, or does the old measure, the happiness index, continue to be relevant? Because you also said that part of happiness is subjective, like, important is the mental state. And so meditation and other practices, traditional practices to calm the mind continues to be important. But then it's also subjective. So if it is subjective could you still measure that at the gross level? Anyway, I hope I am clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if the fairly recent emigration of young people feature or affect the results that the last survey have come out with. The last survey was 2022. And I think the emigration has actually reached its peak more after that, or just around the time of the survey. So I don't know if that would have been really the determining factor in changing the narrowly happy group of people. I don't think that would be. This is an assumption again. I've not been involved in the actual indexes. This is work carried out by the Center for Bhutan and Gross National Happiness Studies. I'm a conscious follower of their work. Bhutan still, according to the state statistics, has about 12% of the population under poverty. So if you look at the economic living standards, there are quite a lot of people who don't have even the minimum required to be above poverty line. So when you look at the index, I suppose we have to always think about the conditions of happiness, whether the educational, the health facilities that are measurable are whether it's a measurement of these quantifiable, measurable goals. The inner state of the mind is non-quantifiable, and therefore I don't think any survey can really reflect that accurately. You would have a hermit in the mountains, as Eddie must have met on his art works there, who will probably have much less than the basic income. Maybe they'll have a good health, of course, because even as meditators you need good health, but they may not have a good income, they may not have the required education qualifications, but yet because of their inner training of the mind, they could probably be the happiest people. So I think for a society in general, you cannot apply these unique special cases. For a society in general, you have the basic measurable system to know that you are making progress, to provide the basic facilities, and then once you meet those basic provisions, it's up to the individual. And again, we have different faiths in the country. We have, even within Buddhism, different traditions. Within each tradition, there may be different meditation practices. It's entirely up to the individual what really makes them more happy. I would say that Bhutan's attempt is to really have a system in place to measure the conditions of happiness. One misinformation that results often from the travel publicity materials is that Bhutan is the happiest place. Bhutan has never claimed to be that, but Bhutan has set a goal to become a happy country. And I think there is very important information. Bhutan aims to have a sustainable, holistic development. It never made a claim that we are the best and the happiest place, even in Asia, let alone the world.
Thank you. Thank you for that. But still, I mean, the measurements of your gross national happiness moved from 40 to 48, right? Yeah, percent, which is still a growth over a certain period of time.
Excuse me.
And the thing with indices is, of course, you have to have a standard. You have to follow the same standard, or else they're incomparable. So that's the difficulty of shifting or changing. And anyway, it is very difficult to measure
yes.
a personal sense, right?
We are saying that
Yeah.
happiness is, measuring it is highly personal.
Yes.
Then how can it be quantifiable?
Yes.
That's all.
It's
That's
difficult.
why I asked.
Yeah, that is the challenge.
How did we, the survey,
Yeah.
according to maybe wealth,
Yeah.
poverty level, etc. to ask the poor, ask the rich.
Yes.
So this is something which is, happiness is something that is very hard to quantify.
Yes.
Because it's highly personal. I can lie. You ask me, you are conducting a survey. Okay, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But you see where I live. I mean, I'm not saying that, but things like that. And I see on YouTube, I see on the internet that others are living in a different way. Why not me? So,
Yeah, you're
Very
happiest
In-
doing your Bangla dance. We have a lot of young people who are happy doing rap or punk music. Anyway,
Yeah.
so what in Bhutan we are really focusing on is to measure the basic conditions that is required by the society in general, not again some
Yeah.
individual except
Yes.
specific cases.
Yeah.
But then, in our own work at Loden and in my own personal work, we often try to get this message across that globally, we need to have a two-pronged approach to human progress. One, of course, we develop education, we develop health facilities, we develop technology to get as far as we can. And a lot of developed countries in Western Europe, Eastern Asia, North America have reached there. But if you don't have the other approach, the other prong, the other essential component, which is to look inward, the spiritual side, if you are not having any education on contentment, your human greed is limitless. You may become trillionaires and you'd still be miserable not having more than that. So I think the approach has to be globally, one where we develop materially, but at the same time also train people to look inward, to have spiritual values, cultural values. And at one point we will reach a stage where these two balances perfectly, and that would be an ideal society, where you have all the material needs and you have this spiritual inner composure to enjoy and have a fulfilled life.
Yes, so that is what we aim for, ultimately balance. Yeah. I'm going to ask the rest of the people who have questions to please get to your question and ask it as succinctly as possible, as they've been kind enough to give us an extra so many minutes since we started late, but we're trying to catch up. Okay, Game, your turn, sir.
Good morning. My name is Johnson. I'm from UST. And I have one question for Sir Eddie Jose. It is undeniable that Philippines is facing various issues today.
Can you speak just a little bit slower and maybe a little farther from the mic?
It is
There-
undeniable.
Yeah.
It is undeniable that Philippines is already facing various issues today. The country is struggling to alleviate poverty, inflation, unemployment, brain drain, illiteracy, pollution, but the issue of loss of culture is not given that much attention. How will you persuade the government, educational institutions, and the youth the importance of preserving culture as tools for national progress and the realization of our national identity?
Okay.
Identity.
So okay, it's the question about you mentioned poverty alleviation, and of course that how important it is for governments, and is it realistic to expect? Is that what you were asking? Or how?
Since the country is already facing various issues, such as poverty, inflation, and such, and the loss of culture is not given that much attention by the government. So how will you persuade the government into focusing on cultural preservation as tools for our progress and also a source of our national identity?
Okay, so how to persuade government to take this on as a priority, right? Yeah.
You know, we have a long history. Most of our neighbors were
Eddie, can you hold the mic a little?
most of our neighbors weren't Christianized. We would have been luckier if we were Buddhist, because of what Buddhism means. Okay, it means you question a lot of things. Christianity, tuturuan ka lang, maniwala ka. Buddhism asks you to ask questions about yourself, your life, your community, and everybody around you. Okay? I live in a secular world, I live in a Christian world, I live in a Buddhist world. Pero, sabihin ko, if we had a Buddhist culture, we would preserve our culture. We would preserve our natural resources. You just go to, if you go to, not all of them are perfect, okay? You have Myanmar, they're killing each other. Okay, you have Cambodia, you have Vietnam, but most of it is good. So, I'm still a Catholic, but I believe in the Buddhism. So, putting it that way, everybody has a responsibility and duty to preserve what we have. Okay? And that is a fulfillment that we Filipinos must do. It's very difficult to talk. Talk is cheap. Okay? I know because I walk the walk and I do what I do. I don't care what other people say. I care what I do best. It might be simple, but everybody has to do something. Mga college student kayo, everybody, your life is just beginning. Okay? What about yung mga babata sa, there's so many children in the Philippines. What about their generation? We have a responsibility for that generation too. So, yun na lang sasabihin ko. You have to strive to improve not your life, but everybody's life. That I see in Bhutan, by the way. The community, the family. Dito sa Pilipinas may family, but where are they? They're in Saudi Arabia. They're in Europe. They're in Hong Kong. It's happening to Bhutan also. So, we have to strive better. So don't vote people who only look after their pockets. That's your responsibility.
So, there you go. Instead of perhaps looking to governments to lead us in this aspect of things, look inside you and see that it's an individual responsibility, our own, to ourselves, to our fellow, to our fellow citizens, specifically to your generation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good day. My name is Kenji from the University of Santo Tomas, and my question is addressed to our lecturer, Karma PHUNTSHO. Do you think other countries could learn from Bhutan's approach to happiness and culture? If so, how could they use it practically?
Can you please
again?
repeat that, please?
Do you think other countries could learn from Bhutan's approach to happiness and culture? If so, how could they use it practically?
How could they use in practice?
Practically.
Thank you very much. And my response is yes, definitely yes. I meet a lot of people who visit Bhutan, and especially when they come from the first world, as we call it, developed countries in Western Europe or North America or Far East Asia. I tell them that Bhutan's gross national happiness, in fact, is much more applicable to them than to a small poor country like Bhutan. We are still struggling with a lot of basic facilities, and I now remember why our narrowly happy people have actually increased in 2022. I think it would be because of the effect of COVID. Because during COVID, a lot of people lost their source of income. So that would have impacted. So what the developed world, the countries where they have already reached a high level of material comfort, they really need to go one step further and look at environment, how they can build a better surrounding, how they can really help for our planet to last longer. Unfortunately, the trend around the world is not really going in that direction. We know, in spite of all the environmental conventions, most states are not committing to cut down the fossil fuel use and so forth. The second is also to look inward, and spiritual traditions all across the world is declining. I don't know about the state of Catholicism here in Philippines. It seems that a lot of people go to churches, but don't necessarily follow the teachings. So it is important, I think, that Bhutan's holistic approach to development take into consideration environment conservation, spiritual well-being, along with economic development and material comfort. That is taken up by everybody around the world. It need not be taken up in the Bhutanese way, but the core message is really think of all aspects of life and human progress and try to have a very wholesome, responsible development rather than go for fast profit making and also reckless consumption. There are two things that we at the Lothian Foundation address through our social entrepreneurship program, and I think this is critical for even young people here in Philippines, particularly the aspiring and emerging entrepreneurs. You need to think beyond a single bottom line of making profit. You may get as rich as you like and build a mansion, but the moment you drive out of your compound, if the society is in problem, in chaos, you'll never be able to enjoy the full life, the full sort of range of happiness you can have. So it's important to think of one's profit, but also about the benefit you bring to the society, to the environment, to the community. So we, at least in Bhutan, claim that the entrepreneurs we support get to know about these values, to be socially responsible, to be intelligent businessmen and women, bodhisattva entrepreneurs, as we often call them, those who think both for oneself and others. So in the funding that we give, we look at four main conditions. First is the business has to be viable financially because they have to pay back our loan. Second, the business must have social impact. It can either substitute an import that we bring in, it can create jobs to solve the youth unemployment problem, it can fill a gap in the society. For instance, we supported the first waste manager in the country, and he today manages the waste of the capital city. Then we look at third, environmental friendliness. If a business is going to destroy the environment, we say no, you're not eligible for our support. And the business has to be also culturally sensitive. So we at Lothian, we think that our model is relevant to not only Bhutan and Philippines, but to everybody in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? All right. I mean, are we at the point, do we still have time or do we need to wrap up now? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the questions and for the very engaging answers. Well, it's sort of my job to try and synthesize. So much has been covered, so much has been covered. But I think what stand out to me, because they were not only mentioned by Dr. Karma here, but also by Ligaya, is change, not just the change, but the pace of change, which has been so dramatically increased that we are grappling with sort of two worlds, as one of the young people here has brought out. So we are both living a little bit in the past and trying to catch up with the future, and the result has been some confusion. I think the Buddhist point of view, which is to try and think a little bit more, to be still and try to see where you might achieve a balance between what we have or what our traditions have tried to teach us and where we are trying to go in the future. Because therein lies your discovery or individual discovery of happiness. And I think, well, happiness can be probably described otherwise as peace or harmony, but it will start and it will begin with a personal harmony. In other words, if deep in yourself you can combine all of these goals you have, and in Bhutan they try to develop what you call intelligent business, bodhisattva entrepreneurs, right? Bodhisattva enterprises that merge or that combine the need to satisfy what the community needs and what personally satisfies you. To be mindful. Again, it comes home to mindfulness, I think. And as when you began your lecture, you spoke to us about the Buddha speaking of the supreme kind of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of change. So change is part of our lives today. Tremendous change is part of our lives today. And it's up to us to find our own individual ways of balancing and discovering a source of happiness, not just outside, but it begins, I think, internally, inside. I don't know that I covered all the points, but I love the way you told your story about the old man, who had this little chant about your bamboo hat. And that one says to us that embedded in our legends, in our little songs, in our, even in the way, in our oral traditions, are ways of looking at the world in kinder times. And it's important that we squeeze out the lessons from there, rather than, it's not just about the forms, but it's about what they were trying to communicate, what they were trying to say, and bring those over into today, into present times, into the ways we live. Okay, so let me thank our main guest, Dr. Karma, and our panelists. You have shed light on how balancing tradition and modernity can pave the way for a more harmonious and forward-thinking culture. But before we wrap up today's, we are wrapping up today's lecture. Let me thank the audience, of course, for being here and joining us, and for your questions. My hope is that you will continue thinking about what was spoken about here today, because that's the most important takeaway, to continue thinking about what these ideas have brought up. Suzanne, would you like to come up here and join us? And Ms. Joy, is this here?
Thank you, Ms. Emily. We'd like to acknowledge and thank RMAF Chair Cheche Lazaro, who is with us online. At this juncture, may we request the following to join our moderator and panelists on stage for a photo. Ms. Suzanne Siskel, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Ramon Magsaysay Award Foundation, and Ms. Joy Alampay, Director of the Ramon Magsaysay Transformative and Leadership Institute. All the rest, please remain seated. Thank you once again for joining us in the RMTLI lecture series this morning with Dr. Karma Phuntsho, 2024 Ramon Magsaysay Awardee from Bhutan. We would like to acknowledge our...
Can all the youth stand up and wave? We'll have a shot facing the stage. Thank you.
We would like to acknowledge your partners for today's event. This event is supported by Animation Council of the Philippines Incorporated, SGV and Company, and special thanks to Pioneer Life Incorporated. We would also like to acknowledge our co-conveners, ASEAN Youth Advocates Network, Asia Society Philippines, Center for Filipino Youth Volunteers SINAG, Far Eastern University International Studies Society, GoodGov PH, FINMA Education, Student Council Alliance of the Philippines, University of the Philippines Diliman Information Office, UP Asian Center, and Zwelig Family Foundation. We would love to see you share your time with us here during the lectures. Please tag us on social media at Magsaysay Award with hashtag Ramon Magsaysay Award and hashtag RMTLI Lecture Series. Please let us know what you think about this lecture by filling in the feedback form when you scan the QR code on the screen. We will provide certificates of completion for those who answer the feedback form. The RMTLI Lecture Series is just the first of the events for the 66th Ramon Magsaysay Awards Festival Week. We also invite everyone to join this afternoon's lecture by Farwiza Farhan from Indonesia, this year's recipient of the Emergent Leadership Award from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. You may register for these lectures by visiting bit.ly/RMTLI_lecture series 2024 or scan the QR code flashed on the screen. We would also like to invite everyone to the 66th Ramon Magsaysay Awards presentation ceremonies on November 16, Saturday at 4 p.m. We would also like to thank the official media partners of the 66th Ramon Magsaysay Awards Festival season, NHK World Japan, Associated Press, and Mongabay Indonesia. To keep updated on our latest activities, visit our website at rmaward.asia or follow us on social media at Magsaysay Award. Please wait for the ushers to guide you to the exit. Your packed lunch can be claimed at the food table located outside the hall. Thank you and have a good day. But as we are preparing for the second session, we kindly request the audience to clear the hall area for our next event. In the meantime, we invite you to head over to the Ramon Magsaysay Plaza to claim your food. Thank you for your cooperation, and we look forward to seeing you at the next lecture.